Want to fly abroad this year? Don't even bother. Between the lateral flow test and the PCR test, the mask guidance and the mountain of paperwork, flying is pretty impractical these days. Spectator columnist Lionel Shriver has managed to make it to New York, but wrote about the hellish experience in this week's issue. She joins me now. Lionel, in your column this week, you said that you've been surprised as you suddenly found yourself agreeing with Theresa May. What's going on there?
I actually agree with her for once. And, it was a relief because I've been so mean about her. I've screamed so many things at the TV when she's speaking, and it was simply delightful to hear her talking such common sense. She's very concerned about the aviation industry and the importance of a viable one in an island nation. She has a sensible attitude toward COVID. She takes the government seriously when it says that we need to learn to live with COVID because it's not ever going to get back down to zero again. And if we keep secretly pursuing a zero COVID strategy, we will never be able to travel abroad again. And is that really the kind of life we want? And I second that. We do down airplanes all the time because of concern over climate change, and I thought it was important we finally stick up for them. I believe that especially international air travel is one of the most marvelous things about being alive today, and I don't want to see it go away.
Now, you're joining us from New York. Can you talk us through what your experience is like flying at the moment? Because a lot of people have been put off it entirely, but it's fair to say there are a lot more hurdles than before.
Well, they're right to be put off it. And furthermore, the experience of flying right now out of the country, especially out of the UK, is a political one. In fact, my biggest problem is that I become a danger to myself because this whole situation enrages me so much that I'm likely to get myself into trouble. We all know you have to get a test before flying. I could live with that if they took the results seriously. Okay, fine, I booked my lateral flow test with some difficulty because these things are never simple. Anything online is horribly complicated. But I managed with a great deal of self-congratulations. And I went to the wrong testing center first, and then we practically ran to the one on the 5th floor at Terminal 2 to make sure we got to our 4:10 appointment. The experience was one of relative efficiency given the inefficiency of the entire business. But if you believe that the tests are accurate, and therefore you have an entire load of passengers who are not infected with COVID-19, why do we have to wear masks? And that's even assuming that they work, which of course they don't. So that pantomime is exasperating. And that's one of the reasons that air rage incidents, especially in the United States, are going through the roof. And in my column, I called attention to an incident that went viral last month in which a poor flight attendant was not only bloodied, but lost 2 teeth.
Now, the debate in UK government is ultimately pushing towards harder border restrictions than any easing. There are no countries added to the green list on the latest update. Few expect there to be next time. And I think there seems to be this argument developing that actually tighter borders, particularly linked to countries like New Zealand and Australia, means greater domestic freedoms. It's what several cabinet ministers are pushing. Do you think perhaps they do have a point, and maybe travelling is just something that is nice? That's what some would say, but ultimately domestic freedoms are going to count first.
Okay, that's a very peculiar definition of domestic freedom. Not, freedom not to be able to leave your own country. That is more reminiscent of Eastern Europe before the fall of the Iron Curtain. It's one of the things that we used to feel sorry for them about, more than anything, that they weren't allowed to leave their own country. So I don't call that freedom. And furthermore, just as if we believe the tests work, we shouldn't have to wear masks on airplanes. If we believe the vaccines work, we should be able to fly wherever we want and come back home and not lock the door behind us for 10 days. I mean, the UK has not given the vaccinated any more freedom, any more rights than the unvaccinated. That is demotivating to get vaccinated, but most of all, it casts doubt on whether the government really has faith in its signature program. I mean, we go to all this trouble and expense to vaccinate increasingly the better part of the adult population, and yet, we're still cowering in fear and can't go anywhere. There is no excuse for making me take a test at all to get on the plane. There is no excuse for making me quarantine when I get home. And there's no excuse for making me get these expensive PCR tests when I arrive back in London. I am double vaccinated. I got my second jab 6 weeks ago. I'm as safe as houses. I'm as safe as it's going to get. And if I'm not safe, then we're in this hell forever.
Now, finally, I just wanted to mention your new book, Should We Stay or Should We Go, which talks about confronting death. And we have a piece in this week's magazine by A.N. Wilson, which looks at perhaps how our attitudes towards mortality has changed in the past year and a half of the pandemic. Do you think that people are now, I suppose, more focused, or you could say sensitive about death? So the idea of death has become something that should be eradicated rather than something that perhaps we just have to accept?
Well, I think the whole COVID period has heightened awareness of aging and mortality. And maybe in the wrong direction. It's made people more fearful, more risk averse. And I wish it were working the other direction. If there's any lesson in my new novel, which I hope is mostly just an exercise in sheer entertainment, then it's that we need to be more intentioned in relation to the end of our life, and to apply the same kind of intention to our old age and inevitable death as we do to the other parts of our lives. I mean, we plan to be whatever when we grow up. We make decisions about marriage and family. We have a sense of direction. It's often subverted, but we just don't want to think about the last bit. And the pandemic has forced us to think a little more about the last bit, because it's been up in our face in broadcast newscasting. And to agree, if we apply that greater awareness in a positive way, that's not a bad thing. If we instead just become more and more terrified, well, that's just a formula for not just living and then dying, but not living at all.